Hey guys, so today's question is all about work-life balance. So I'm gonna show it to you guys right here. And it says, hey guys, how to balance work and life. I have a huge problem to focus myself and balance my life in terms of work, family, hobby, and health. What are your best strategies to manage yourself? So I wanted to focus on this question today because work-life balance is a term that we hear thrown around quite a bit. So are we achieving good work-life balance? We think it's super important, et cetera, et cetera. We feel kind of shamed if maybe we're not achieving it to the standard that we think we should. So I dug into the science and I found some really interesting things to share with you guys on work-life balance. So first of all, let's take a look at this study where we learn about the different types of workaholics. So that's what they call people who are not achieving work-life balance. And we know that there's actually two types of workaholics. And there is something we call the enthusiastic workaholic and the non-enthusiastic workaholic. So the biggest difference here is that both types are defined by people who are exhibiting high work involvement and high drive to work. However, the enthusiastic workaholic reports high enjoyment of risk, in contrast with the non-enthusiastic workaholic who reports low enjoyment of risk. So I'm sure a lot of you see this also in your everyday life. You probably know someone that just works like crazy, but they love it. And you probably know someone that works like crazy and it's kind of killing them, right? So we actually know that individuals who are enthusiastic workaholics actually report the same level of life satisfaction as non-workaholics. So although they work quite a bit, they experience the same levels of life satisfaction and of life purpose as what we would call like normal people. Um, so it seems their enthusiasm is protective in that regard. So the research does warn that that doesn't mean that they're protected necessarily from the stress and health effects of workaholism. So it does warn that both types of workaholics do need to be wary of mitigating stress and focusing on making sure that they can maintain a healthy lifestyle in regards to their workaholism. So we'll talk a little bit more later on strategies to do this. But I wanted to show you one or two more studies before we do that. So right here, we are going to look at this study. And here we go. The constraints of a work-life balance approach. So you guys know that I love to kind of actually think about the definition of this term, of any term we look at, and exactly what is work-life balance, right? So this study outlines kind of the historical data behind the term work-life balance. We know that this term has not been around forever. It started getting popularized in the 80s, 90s. And we know that that the whole term work-life balance is more of a reaction in our society to the changes in work and the profound changes in the nature of work. So I'm sure a lot of you experience this, in which you may feel like your work never really leaves you, where we always have the capacity to work if we have an online job, if we're what we call a knowledge worker. Let's see, what else did I want to show you guys here? Okay, so I thought this was important as well in this article, is that they argue here that work-life balance should actually be divided into two categories, in which we talk about personal control of time, and then we also talk about work-life flexibility. So if we think of these two constructs as separate, it kind of gives us a better strategy on how to devise a better work-life balance. So if we think personal control of time, this is more based on individual freedom, freedom of the worker, freedom of kind of doing what you want in the day, versus workplace flexibility is more of the support of the workplace in allowing the worker to kind of have a more balanced life. And we might think of that more as paid leave when someone adopts or has a child, etc., things like that. Let's see. So I wanted to, oh, here we go. I wanted to share one more article here. And again, you guys know that, where is this? You guys seeing this? You guys have seen this quite a bit. We actually have a lot of studies on physicians. It's just, that's a profession that's highly studied. But again, I do feel like oftentimes any high stress profession can kind of correlate. We can at least take out a few pieces of knowledge here and maybe apply it to other high stress workplaces or workplaces that require long hours. So what was interesting here was that the strongest predictor of work-life balance and burnout was having some control over schedule and hours worked. So that kind of relates back to the previous study in which we were talking about individual freedom and personal control of time, right? So it says here the National Physician Survey suggests that physicians can struggle with work-life balance, yet remain highly satisfied in their careers. So this kind of relates back to the first study we looked at, in that there is the concept of the enthusiastic workaholic. And some people just love what they do, and that might be okay. I think when you have a family, maybe that's something you want to consider, because it's not just your needs that need to be met. But if you're an individual that just enjoys doing their work, and you hear people kind of throw around the term work-life balance, like you don't have work-life balance, maybe you're just okay. There's not a lot in the literature to really say anything about the fact that if you enjoy working and you just work a ton, that it really has some kind of adverse effect. So we found here that there is actually a complex relationship between physician career satisfaction and work-life balance and burnout. So burnout is something that you might need to be mindful of if you are concerned with work-life balance. Just working very long hours, working to the point of exhaustion, is something that our bodies just eventually will not be able to handle well. So sometimes kind of the idea of like, to go far, you need to kind of go slowly in order to really achieve a goal that is, that you place in the distance. So sometimes it might be might be a better idea to think of it as, if I want to reach that goal, I need to make sure to think more like an endurance athlete, less like a sprinter. So if I can go for a long time and maybe take a break and then go for a long time, then that might actually be better than sprinting and burning out. I hope that example made sense. I feel like it was a little bit convoluted. So right here we see that problems with work-life balance are much less predictive of career satisfaction than the sense of personal accomplishment and level of emotional resilience that physicians can struggle with. They can struggle with work-life balance, but remain highly satisfied in their careers. And we see that the strongest single predictor of emotional resilience and personal accomplishment was control over schedule and hours worked. And control, okay, so this is interesting, because I would actually want to ask these researchers, is it actual control of hours worked, or is it perceived control? Because in psychology, we know that perceived social support, perceived control is actually more important than actual. So if our brains feel like we have control over our lives, that actually has a lot of protective elements in stress, in depression, things like that. So I wanted to give you guys some practical pieces here. So I'm gonna share a little worksheet with you guys. This is from Bill Barnett and Dave Evans, who wrote Design Your Life. Now they have a new book called Design Your Work Life, and they're at Stanford. So sometimes we have these goals that we want to achieve, like work-life balance, but it's hard to achieve a goal like this without really laying it out and putting some actual work into it. Haha. So I wanted to encourage any of you that are struggling with this to really do a worksheet maybe similar to this, in which you kind of look at your love, play, work, health, and say, where am I with this, right? And then we look at what incremental change could you do this week, small changes, to move your bar in to the more full direction. And little by little, if you print this out, maybe do this for a few weeks straight, you can maybe gain some momentum in a area of your life in which you're struggling with. I think these types of worksheets can seem a little maybe cheesy in the beginning for some people, but I encourage you to try it. It might work really well, and if it doesn't, there's not a lot to lose. Another technique that I think might be helpful in this as well, because you might think, hey, I actually want to achieve better work-life balance, but I actually have no idea what I like doing besides working. Like, I work, that's all I do, and that's what I enjoy. So, oh, here we go. So what I would encourage there is think of having something we call a joy journal. This is another Dave Evans idea. And this is, again, a little more cheesy than it actually is, but what you want to do is you want to go through your day, and anytime that you actually feel kind of that joy, engagement, feeling like you're like really in the right place, doing the right thing, take a note of it. Take a note what you were doing, where you were, etc., and kind of just keep a log throughout the week of the moments that bring you joy, right? So, and after that week, go back to your journal, take a look over and kind of look for some patterns. Again, this is a more systemic way to achieve a better like work-life balance, which can be more effective in actually having you actually achieve it versus, you know, we just kind of think about it and kind of have that guilt of like, oh, I should be doing this, but you know, one day, maybe I'll just achieve it randomly. I think the joy journal can also actually be a huge protective mechanism against kind of the stress and burnout that we were talking about. Because again, as you guys know, I like to talk about how positive emotions are protective. And if we have our brains feeling positive emotions, we can protect against burnout and become more resilient in the things that we do. And, you know, if we enjoy working a ton, that can be something that we can focus on for longer without having the complications of burnout or just stress. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you have a question, please leave it in those comments below. And I will see you next time.